just started watching Dekalog. Um, I just started watching Dekalog, and it's weird. It Kieslowski is doing everything. A lot of what I've been working towards, trying to achieve, um, drama through subtext and emotions. Trying to capture the drama, the intensity of one's inner life through external implications and mannerisms, but it's very subtle. Decalogue is very subtle, but um, now that I'm watching it, in a way, it's a little bit underwhelming in some sense because it Decalogue feels more like a short story, like a collection of short stories, rather than um, feels more like a collection of short stories rather than like a full feature. And I know it wasn't intended to be viewed as a feature. I think it was like a mini series. It was released in like 1988, and I don't know. It's a very rewarding series. I have no regrets watching it, but at times it leaves me feeling unsatisfied. Because it's like you know, just as you're getting invested in the story, it ends, and then you have to start over with an entirely new set of characters and plot. And, you know, it's also a little bit unsatisfying and underwhelming, or just unsatisfying, because literally it's like he's trying to capture reality, or at least how one experiences reality emotionally. And reality doesn't give you answers. It's very subjective and open to interpretation. And oftentimes you're not entirely sure what the characters are, why the characters are making decisions that they make. And so it's very profound, this series. It's very slice of life, you know, and it's interesting. It holds your attention, and each episode is an hour, but it feels like 30 minutes. Because there's not a single one. I often get the feeling that with each episode that Kieslowski is exhausting. By the end of the episode, Kieslowski has exhausted the entire subject. By the end of each film, I feel like there's not a single frame, not a single line wasted. And by the end of the scene, by the very last, from the very first scene to the very last shot, by the very end, you get a sense of, okay, everything that needs to be said on this subject is said. And this is the only conclusion that it could have been, given the psychology and the motivations of each character involved in the story. And so it's very brilliant. It's very powerful, very profound. It's very interesting. But just like life, it's a little bit underwhelming, a little bit exhausting, a little bit unsatisfying, and I think that's part of what makes it a masterpiece, but also what's holding it back from being held in the same regard as any of the films in the top 100, because those films they provide answers in some ways. There's a sense of closure. You start the story, and then like the thing about Dekalog is that there's no closure. You never get a sense that you've fully you understand the characters, and you understand in some ways why they did what they did. Although he leaves it ambiguous, but anyone with proficient emotional intelligence will be able to um, infer why the characters did what they did and make some sense of the ending. But it's weird. It's the last episode I watched last night was um, not the last episode, but the second to last episode I watched was a short film about love, and it hit me. You know, it resonated with. Hold on one second. Oh, I got this. Anyway, the last episode I watched, a short film about love, it resonated, you know, with what I experienced with Maria. And I'm aware of the fact that, well, first I'll say it resonated because currently my understanding of women is, you know, is basically me projecting onto them my needs, my own illusions of who they are, and then taking advantage, and them not taking advantage of it, but ridiculing it, you know, getting a sick pleasure out of the chase, but with no intention of actually acting on any like pretend. You know, it's more curiosity and flattery on the woman's part in terms of her relationship with me towards me, and so this film really resonated in that sense because that's exactly what happened. He told her he loved her, and she wanted to shatter his illusions about her, and then after he ran away, after she in a way broke his heart, he ran away, he fled, and slit his wrists. You know, he survived, but he no longer loved her because she mistreated him. She well not only humiliated him, but she just tormented him. Sort of. She didn't treat him with any respect. She had no respect for how he felt towards her, and she treated him like he was nothing. You know, it was just a game to her. His feelings towards her was just something. It was just it just she it was humorous. It was a joke to her, and I think one thing I took away from the story is that she was so just numb to illusions, to ideals, to ideas about love, that when someone actually professed that he loved her, it was just a joke to her. It's not something to be taken seriously because life had worn her down, and she no longer believed that love was actually existed. And the interesting thing about this film is that she ended up, in a way, falling in love with him after he slit his wrists, because she realized that maybe she did need him in her life, you know. But at that point, he was over her, you know. He saw her for who she really was. And one thing I like about Kieslowski in his treatment of her character is that he acknowledges the fact that she was somewhat bitter towards love. That deep down she was capable, perhaps, of reciprocating the same love he felt for her, but age and experience had just worn her down, and She was disillusioned by age and experience, and she didn't know what to do. You know, and in a way, she was almost afraid of being hurt by his love, and so she treated it like a game, something worth destroying, because in her mind, it's too painful. Admitting that love is real at that point in her life would be too painful. You know, sometimes we shatter our illusions, or we talk ourselves out of the things that we want or need. We tell ourselves that it isn't true because it's too painful to keep chasing after it. The disappointment of not obtaining it is so painful that we just convince ourselves it doesn't exist. And I think that's in a way what she did. You know, Kieslowski obviously didn't go to any great length to expound on why she believed the way she did. You know, he only had an hour, but I don't know. Based on my experience with women, and I don't have that much experience, but based on the few experiences that I have, um, and based on my own experience with other matters, not particularly not exactly love, but in other areas aspects of my life, um, that's what it seemed like to me. Because she ended up loving him in her own way, in some respects out of necessity, because the guilt she felt. You know, sometimes guilt unleashes all sorts of feelings in you that you had repressed, been repressing for many years, and fear and, well, guilt is based on some level of fear. So, fear, um, fear will do that to you. It'll release pent up feelings and emotions and ideas that you would have been had rather not have wanted to acknowledge. Um, so this film resonated with me, and I think it might have been my favorite episode of the series because it was an episode that I could relate to. A lot of the episodes in Decalogue, I'm not really. I don't have that. I don't have that much experience. I mean, fuck. So many people my age, they seem like they have so much more experience than me, and in some ways they do. But I don't have that much experience. I know a lot, but I don't have that much practical, real world experience, and so I can understand it. I'm emotionally intelligent. I have enough emotional intelligence to understand what's happening in the story, but not necessarily enough for it to resonate. You know, not so much for it to resonate. Um, so I feel like this film will uh, grow on me over time. The older I get, and the more I rewatch it with time, over time, it could end up being my favorite film of all time. I could definitely see that happening. But right now, I don't have enough experience for all of this to resonate, to thoroughly appreciate what it is that he's done. Because I do appreciate it. It's weird. It's like I recognize everything he's doing, not just story wise, not just in a lot of ways technique wise, but I'm too immature or too inexperienced to fully resonate with who I am as a person, for me to actually watch it and go, yes, this is life. And boy, has he fucking captured it and basically captured the essence of this particular experience. The way one experiences these sort of circumstances. So I'm gonna finish Decalogue. Um, this may be quite possibly it's not the greatest film of all time. It just isn't because it's too unsatisfying. And I know that that's part of why it's a masterpiece. As I said, it's a masterpiece because that's life. Life is unsatisfying. So in a way, that's the only way it could be, because he's trying to capture life itself. But because it's a story and because it's still fiction, for it to be unsatisfying is as realistic and accurate as it is. It's in some respects poor storytelling, and I don't really mean poor storytelling, but that's the only way I know how to put it to get my point across. It's like you want a story to have some measure of closure, something that I don't know. That's just my opinion. That's how I feel. I want some sense of it, some of the episodes. I feel like it could have ended better. You know, it felt like a cop out. Like he didn't truly perhaps understand what he was telling well enough to give some sense of closure to the ending of the story. Like there's this one story between about a woman who hijacks a man, her ex, her husband, a husband cheated on his wife with this woman, and the woman needs pretends that she needs that she's that her husband is lost, and they need to go track him down. And so she hijacks his life for an entire night. And as it turns out, it was a big lie. She just wanted to see him in the hopes of making him fall in love with her all over again. And it ends with her having confessed all this to him, and everything comes back full circle. All the answers are revealed, and then they get in their cars, and then both of them flash their lights at each other to let the other one know that I want you to go first. And then the woman, I think, goes first. And then after about 10 or 15 seconds, he drives off in the opposite direction, and that's it. And in a way, it's perfect, but it's deeply unsatisfying. It's deeply unsatisfying, and it's like it feels like what's it called? I have it up there. Nine Stories by J.D. Salinger. It's like a J.D. Salinger short story collection where it's like it's so vivid and true what he's writing about, but because it only captures like a tiny slice of life, there's not a story. It's just a moment. He's capturing a moment. He's capturing a feeling, and he does it to perfection. But because it leaves you wanting more, in a way, you almost feel so disappointed that you feel like you've gotten everything you've needed from it. You know, like oh yeah, that was a great story, but I don't need to reread it because I got everything I needed from it. It did what it was supposed to do, and I'm satisfied in that respect because it was so great, well written. I'm talking about J.D. Salinger right now. It was so well written, but it's because nothing, in a way, nothing really happened. There was no real story involved. It was just a moment. Um, it doesn't make you want to keep coming back to it necessarily. You got everything you needed from it, and that's the problem with telling short films or TV specials, whatever Dekalog is. It's only an hour long. Is that you only have so much time. You have to condense all these ideas and all these um, character arcs in such a short amount of time that you have to kind of reduce it to the bare essentials. And as well and as great as he and as well as he does it, it is just it's deeply unsatisfying. And so I'm gonna rewatch it, and it'll definitely probably be with age and experience. It'll definitely grow on me, and I'll come to really truly appreciate it as it's meant to be appreciated. But right now, um, that's how I feel.